The Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. In part 4, I propose that the Garden of Eden is symbolic of the universal principle of sowing and reaping, which Paul outlined in Galatians 6, verses 7 through 10. The placing of man in the garden represents the fact that everyone, no exception, is subject to this divine principle. So it is that Paul could declare, whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Strong's defines Eden as pleasure and eastward as the front. The east, or time, antiquity. This word for eastward is also found in the following. Remember the former things of old? For I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, or eastward, the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Our phrase ancient times is the same Hebrew word translated eastward, so we could render eastward in Eden as ancient times in Eden. Could we not? The idea of pleasure is answered by the statement that God will do all his pleasure. However, there is still another way to view this. Let's revisit this passage from 1 John chapter 2. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions is not from the Father, but is from the world. In part 4, we considered how the three components of the tree of knowledge correspond to the desires of the flesh and eyes and pride in possessions, as noted in 1 John 2:16. The King James renders desires as lust, which Strong's defines as a longing, especially for what is forbidden. Isn't longing just another way of saying desire? It is. So think about this. All that we do in this life is driven by our desire for pleasure. And the truth is, we were designed this way. For desire is rooted in affection, and affection is a form of love. Since God is love, and we are made in his image, then we function accordingly, whether we realize it or not. Even our struggle with the darkness in our lives is based on love and desire. In part 4, I stated that the desires of the flesh and eyes are not the problem until pride enters. Another way of saying this is that the desires of our flesh and eyes are perfectly fine unless it is at the expense of others. This is why the Lord told Adam that he could eat from every tree of the garden except for the tree of knowledge. Remember, pride is the inordinate love of the self. So when our heart and mind are steeped too deeply in self-love, we are susceptible to hurting others to obtain that which we want or long for. Proof of this is all around us. No wonder Paul stated, "Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." So why was Adam told not to eat of the tree of knowledge? What does this signify? The answer is found in the phrase, "a tree desirable to make one wise," which correlates with the boasting of what he, that is, humankind, has and does. As we see, our word desirable follows our current perspective, while boasting clearly suggests pride. Make one wise. Strong's defines this phrase as to be, make, or act, circumspect and hence intelligent. Merriam-Webster tells us that circumspect means careful to consider all circumstances and possible consequences. When we add this to the idea of seeking pleasure, it agrees with Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality, where we seek pleasure while avoiding pain. It also agrees with Eve's consternation in the temptation story in Genesis chapter 3. Doesn't the idea of eating fruit equate to desire, while you will not surely die? Your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, equates to considering the circumstances and possible consequences? Do we not see pride in the serpent's statements? Might the serpent itself represent this pride? The tree of knowledge is not just any knowledge, but knowledge of good and evil. In other words, an understanding of what is acceptable and what isn't. This brings us to the following. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. What then shall we say? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been for the law, I would not have known sin. I would not have known what it is to covet if the law had not said, "You shall not covet." Let's keep this simple. When the Apostle Paul spoke of the law, he stated that every mouth in the whole world are held accountable to God. Might this correlate with the fact that the principle of sowing and reaping applies to everyone, with no exceptions? We'll come back to this later in this series. He also made it clear that by works of the law, no human being will be justified, that is, made just or innocent by it. In other words, the law falls short of regulating our behavior, so something greater is needed. Paul also tells us that he would not have known sin if it had not been for the law. He would not have known what it is to covet if the law had not said, "You shall not covet." When we bring all of this together, I'm inclined to believe that the tree of knowledge of good and evil represents God's law, which first resides inwardly or in our conscience, and then outwardly in written form. Our phrase "make one wise" takes us to the following. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? Here we are. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? He has, for despite the tremendous advances of industry and technology, we have managed to invent so many things that are not good for us due to our insatiable longing for more. Perhaps the following expresses this accurately. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of men are never satisfied. Seeking pleasure while avoiding pain. Yet, because of our love for darkness, we have brought pain into our existence in ways that previous generations would have never thought possible. And what might be the solution to this dilemma? Please consider. However, we speak wisdom among those who are mature, yet not the wisdom of this age, nor of the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the ages for our glory, which none of the rulers of this age knew. For had they known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Based on what Paul tells us, there is a hidden wisdom, the wisdom of God in a mystery. I believe it is a knowledge and understanding that supersedes a mind based on pride, for it is pride which makes us carnal and at odds with each other. To emphasize, pride is the inordinate love of the self, so it is no wonder that the Lord told us we must deny it. But did he not also tell us to love our neighbor as ourself? He did, which tells us that self-denial means to challenge this pride and seek humility. And once we truly possess it, we will love God and our neighbor as ourselves. In the next video study, we will continue our look into the tree of knowledge as well as the Garden of Eden. If these studies help and encourage you, feel free to subscribe and like them. I pray God bless you with love, kindness, and peace.